Welcome to the Handed Down Kitchen, where we bring recipes out of the past and back into the kitchen. Today's recipe is taken from the 1960s and it's for these lovely tender pork spare ribs, very simply flavoured with garlic, parsley and juniper berries. The recipe says to serve this with boiled white rice dressed with butter, parsley and chopped raw onion, which you have plenty of time to prepare while your ribs are in the oven. We found this recipe in the casseroles chapter of our copy of the Sunday Telegraph cookery book, which was published in 1967. The title of the recipe is Baked Pork Spare Ribs. The recipe makes enough for 4 people, but as it'll just be the 2 of us today, we have halved all of the ingredients. So to make enough for 2 people, you will need the following ingredients. 4 pork ribs, and we got ours from our local butcher. 50 milliliters of white wine, 1 orange, 100 milliliters of beef stock, some garlic, about a handful of parsley, a few juniper berries, and some salt and pepper. Rather than using cooking oils or fats, this recipe instructs us to cook the ribs using the fat that comes off of them. So to start with, trim off some of the fat from each of the ribs like we're doing here. Put these pieces into a heavy sauté pan and cook in the oven at 180 degrees Celsius for as long as it takes for the fat to melt and run freely. As your fat melts in the oven, prepare your ribs. Start by crushing a few juniper berries. The recipe says to use 3 berries for 4 people, but we quickly became aware that our ribs are bigger than those the recipe is written for, so we started with 2, which you're seeing us crush here, but we ended up crushing 4 juniper berries to use overall. Next, finely chop up your garlic. The recipe doesn't tell us how much garlic to use, so we started by using half of this clove of elephant garlic that we'd grown, which is equivalent to about 2 average-sized cloves of garlic. As with the juniper berries, this ended up only being half as much as what we needed. It will only coat one side of the ribs, so the half you've seen us set to one side here did end up being chopped up later on to use on the other side of the ribs. So that's equivalent to 4 average-sized garlic cloves. Then bring your ribs back and mix the garlic together with the crushed juniper berries before rubbing this onto the pork. And this is where you'll see the amounts that we chopped up were not enough to coat both sides of the ribs. This gets used up very quickly indeed. Then add some parsley. We're just tearing off some leaves and patting them straight onto the pork. And then coat your ribs with some freshly ground salt and pepper. Then turn your ribs over and coat them the same way on the other side. About half an hour after putting it in the oven, our fat had melted and was ready to cook with. Remove the crispy bits of skin, and underneath them is the fat we're going to be using to cook with. We didn't want to waste the crispy bits, so we sprinkled them with salt, and now we've got some pork scratchings to munch on while we wait for our ribs to finish. Next, set your pan over a medium heat, and when it's smoking, put your ribs in for about 30 seconds on each side to seal in the flavours. Once that's done, pour in the white wine, then pour in the stock, and squeeze in the juice of a whole orange. Give this a little stir and then put your ribs back in the pan. And transfer back to the oven for them to bake. Rather than going by the oven time suggested in the book, which was just 30 minutes, we went by our butcher's recommendation of 2 hours, basting every half an hour or so. So 2 hours later, here they are. We served ours with the dressed boiled rice recommended by the recipe and also made a quick side salad to balance things out a bit. And as you can see here, the meat comes away from the bone so easily. The ribs are very tender and juicy and not bad flavour-wise considering that they aren't seasoned that much at all. And there they are, baked pork ribs 1960s style. We hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please be sure to leave us a like, and if you're interested in seeing us recreate more antique recipes, subscribe to our channel. You can also find full instructions for this recipe and many more on our website, linked in the description box below.